Welcome to the Tree of Truth podcast with Lidstone and Lambeau. In this podcast, we search for common sense truth from a heightened human consciousness perspective. In doing so, we hope to someday raise and unite the willing minds of humanity up above the orchestrated confusion and dysfunction that so plagues our planet below. With us today is one of the most consequential human consciousness researchers of the 21st century, Alex Tsakiris. By consequential, I mean that his research has made a monumental difference in our understanding, but more importantly, it's created change for the better. To learn more about Alex Tsakiris, please see skeptico.com. That's skeptico.com. My pen name is Matt Lambeau, and I'm a novice human consciousness researcher and author. I shall represent the Western Hemisphere. With me in England is the lovable Lucinda Lidstone. She's a trained psychotherapist practicing for over 20 years, and she has her own very successful podcast called Talking Tea Leaves, which is featured on the growing YouTube alternative called One VSP. That's Talking Tea Leaves, found on the platform One VSP. Lucinda will represent the Eastern Hemisphere. Together, we are your East West connection in hopes of someday uniting the world around common sense truth, or what we call our Tree of Truth. You can find this podcast and everything else about Lidstone and Lambeau at treeoftruth.org. That's treeoftruth.org. With no further ado, let's welcome the lovable Lucinda Lidstone.
Hi, Lucinda. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. I was going to test, but am I okay here?
Yeah,
Microphone is good.
I can hear you and see you okay.
All right, we're ready then. You have a lovely office there, and I like how you've done it. It looks like a great studio. That's super.
Yeah. Well, I can't lay claim to the guitars, unfortunately, because they're my son's.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah. So I just
Nice.
pretend.
No, it looks very cool. You look very rockerish, It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all fake. Yeah. I'm a frustrated musician, unfortunately. I've tried to learn the guitar and I just haven't got the patience. I just haven't got the dedication.
Yeah, I
Do you
don't
play
have
any
any.
musical instruments?
No, I have really no, I love music and I have no skill in that regard. And the same with art. I love art. And I guess everyone has some abilities, but no, I'm just, I'm a happy observer, consumer,
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah. Well, your skills are in what you do on Skeptico, aren't they? Your ability to research and retain information, and it's amazing. It's great. That's your great skill.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I mean, I always felt like communication was, came pretty easily to me. And, the cool thing for me was then technology. And I don't know how you navigated and maneuvered your career, but to find something where your skill set doesn't it matches and then it doesn't match. It's like a lot of people when I got into computer programming, we didn't have the social skills and personal skills. I'm like, aha, here I don't have to be the best programmer. I can, at least survive in that level and be good in this other level. How did that work
Yeah.
for you?
I don't know. I'm with technology. I use it as little as I have to. I guess I've just learned to do what I need to do, and I always see it as a double-edged sword. Without technology, without Zoom, that really rose to its height during COVID, didn't it? Without that, I couldn't be talking to you, not in this way. I couldn't be seeing
Right.
you and interacting with you. So it's amazing on one level, but like my son that owns all the guitars, he's just so captured by it. He was a gamer when he was younger, and I think he possibly is on the autistic spectrum, and so that's his whole life. And I think, my God, you're not even seeing daylight. You're not seeing people in the flesh, and that really worries me. So I guess, as I say, I see it as a double-edged sword. You know, it's all about balance in everything, isn't it? It's about balance, I guess.
Yeah. You know, we have 4 kids, and yeah, it's an amazing journey. And you know, one of the things, our oldest is 29, and then our youngest is still in college. And it doesn't, I always remember this the very apocryphal story of being much younger. My oldest was a teenager, and we were watching one of his sporting events, you know, that, you know, maybe you didn't get dragged to those, but we got dragged to those constantly, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait until, you know, and fill in the blank. And the guy looks over at me and he's like, you know, it doesn't end. He's like, you think this ends? He goes, you're a parent, you know,
Yeah.
that's it. You know, it was this wisdom. He wasn't that much older than me. His kids weren't that much older than me, but it was a wisdom that's like, no, you're a parent. I mean, parenting, been a tough year of parenting for the 29-year-old, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like, you're still, because that's how, and then it's, you know, you remember how you viewed your parents. They were always your parents. And then later
Yeah.
on, you know, the parent, the child role gets reversed, as we all know, but it's still that relationship, you know, it's like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I just think there's so many paradoxes, aren't there, of being a parent. It's like, you know, it's not until they're grown up and you think, okay, I've realized everything I've done wrong, and I want to go
Yes,
back and do it all again right. And
absolutely.
you can't do that. And of course you only
Absolutely.
learn once you've been through that whole process. And I mean, I don't know what it's like over there for you, but over here it's increasingly difficult for young people to move out and to afford their own properties, etc. So my boys are 28 and 29 and they're still living at home. And it's difficult for me because I think, well, if they were living on their own, I wouldn't know half of what I know about them. I certainly wouldn't be knowing what they're doing and interfering in their lives. And yet there they are in my house. So I'm still acting like mum and telling them what to do. So it's really hard to negotiate that, you know. It's very strange times we live in.
Well, I agree completely. And I think it's also, in a way, this is kind of the silver lining that I see with what's going on with AI, because it COVID was COVID was horrible, but it was also, the silver lining there was everything was then set upside down, and you're like, okay, it really is upside down, and only I can figure it out. You know, as I, what that relates to me is, traditionally that's what your kids did. You know, the family stayed together.
Yeah.
You know, oh my God, 27, 20 years old, you know, so just because I get that. I mean, I totally, our kids are out, but they could come back, and I want to be like, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I know what I bought into. You know, you and I, our generational thing, that you go and you move out and you tackle the world and this and that. Frickin' throw that out the window with COVID. You know, throw that out the window. If they can do that kind of social engineering, well, they just social engineered me back then to think
For
that
sure.
that's what I needed to do, and to be in this close family unit was somehow, you know, wrong. You know, bullshit. I can call into question everything now, because they've kind of broken everything down, so I can reconstruct it however I want.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I mean, a couple of centuries ago, people would have all been living in the same house on a certain strata of society, for sure.
Exactly.
And certainly the Asian families tend around here tend to still do that. I guess what I see in not just my kids, my grown-up kids, but other adult young people, is that they just don't they seem to have been kept very immature by the way society has gone. And I guess that's really what I notice. You know, like when I was my son's age, I'd got both of them already. I owned a property, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And so I guess if they were at home, but I felt that they were mature and they were learning and growing, one of them is more than the other. But I don't know, it's a strange old world that they're inheriting, isn't it? Definitely is.
I don't know. You know, the other thing, and hey, Matt, The other thing I think about, and I think about a lot of these things lately, I tell you in the last year, it's like, okay, what does that mean for me as a parent? What does that
Mm,
mean in terms of what is my role? I don't like it. I have to change it. And again, that's
mm.
in a way, it's the silver lining of the COVID thing. It's like these fucking guys are totally trying. They have, who was I talking to the other day? Oh, it was this old school, old time conspiracy guy, been around forever. And he says, they have a plan and you don't. And I thought
Yeah,
that is so freaking true.
yeah,
That is what's true. They have a plan and you don't. And I think that relates to, okay, so they planned to, it's absolutely, they planned for your kids to be, not your kids, but for our
yeah, yeah,
kids to be that way. They planned that.
yeah,
That's what they wanted. And they're
yeah.
getting it. So what's our plan? What's our plan to be different? And in a way that relates to, Matt's overly bold and exaggeratedly outrageous project to change the world.
There is that.
Hello.
Okay, good morning, Lucinda. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good. You look delightful.
Thank you.
She
Friday
does look
morning.
great, doesn't she? She
She
looks
always
good. She looks
does.
very, very camera ready. And then the whole studio, I was telling her, man, I'm like feeling like both of you guys have the studio working. Wow.
We're trying, aren't we, Matt? We're trying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's the latest, greatest on your side of the world, Lucinda?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I've got a good answer today. So last night I went for a walk, as I do, and I walked up to a church that's nearby me. And as I approached the church, the bells started ringing. I think they were having bell ringing practice. And then they stopped and I wandered around for a bit. And then as I came out of the church gate to walk away again, they started ringing again. And it was almost as though the church was saying hello and goodbye. And it was just lovely. So that was my latest greatest from this week.
Oh, that's perfect.
I thought you'd like
Alex?
that.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's to me, it's all about the frequency. And right there, that's pure joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alex, what's going on in your world, sir?
I don't know. I'm taking it day to day, Been having some interesting conversations though.
Do tell.
I know this AI thing continues to fascinate me. And, I think that's why I thought we ought to have this kind of conversation where we're just, all kind of saying where it's because it is, and Lucinda and I were just touching on this a minute ago is, gosh, I mean, to me, it's obvious that this is a transitional point. Not a trend. I hate that. I hate all that stuff. But that, COVID is like undeniably huge,
Mm.
huge. I mean, so why? Why are we living in this COVID time? And then follow it up with AI and what's happening. Undeniably transforms culture. Why are we here on this planet in this incarnation during this time? I don't know, but if that doesn't seem like a gift or an opportunity, I don't know what does. But at the same time, I'm all about trying to balance that with the the nothingness, the Eckhart Tolle kind of, why am I creating this whole fantasy about something that needs to be done, and that the thinking part of it, and the joy of not thinking, the joy of I don't have to think, I don't have to solve, my life isn't a problem to be solved. But it sure seems that way every day when I wake up and when I'm like, oh, I got to solve this, I got to do that. So
I,
how about
I I
you?
think that
How do you guys deal with that? And particularly Matt, you've been the questioner there. How do you deal with that stuff? How do you deal with the spiritual stuff?
Lucinda and I touched on it the other day. And because on one hand, you're 100% correct. Okay. There's a concept, there's a premise that says it's all by design. the place is supposed to be a shit show, and it's a complete exercise in futility to try to do things differently. Okay, that you should just let go of your mind and just ride along with it. But then, with that said, there's something inherently good about our soul. Okay, that says we got to make this place a better world, if not for ourselves, for other people. And so it strikes me as this is the way we're created. Some souls come from the light and they can't tolerate the darkness. They hate the pain and suffering of others, and they wake up motivated each day to try to make the world a better place. But I don't disagree with the premise that says it may be pointless. You know, that is indeed the purpose of the journey, is the difficulty and the trials and tribulations that we wake up to each morning. So Lucy, again, in a perfect world, really what happens is, in my world where I find peace, is the moment I venture out too far, feeling like I can make a difference in this world, I'm always humbled quickly and come crawling back to just the central love that's within these walls of this house.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The world, you venture out too far, it's just a matter of time before your expectations aren't met. You've been humbled greatly. You come back home to the hugs from the ones who give you unconditional love. And it seems to me that most of life is, well, and we know this, all about that. It's about those closest relationships, because beyond those, there's not a whole lot we can do. Now, with that said, there's a caveat, and I'm a big semantics guy. I believe in the power of words, and that if we're using the right chosen words, that society evolves. It evolves and changes occur within our living conditions. But looking at AI and looking at, the deep state and the way things are supposed, again, Lucinda and I the other day were talking a little bit about this dichotomy between good and evil. It certainly runs through humanity. Is it running through aliens? Absolutely, I would guess. It's just a dichotomy that runs through the entire universe and all universes. And so in dealing with it on this planet, we truly have darkness we're dealing with. And in my humble opinion, somewhere in the light is self-evident truth, or a divine truth. And I, from my paradigm of this planet, believe I'm on the side of goodness. I believe that freedom and these types of things are all synonymous with light and love and all these things. So to me, the lines are pretty clear. And I don't mean to go on and on about this, but now the next caveat would be taking the human element out of it. Because if you look at what's happening, it's just these massive personal attacks against each other. Okay, which again, we're fighting over our subjective views. But it's not the person, it's what's in them. And in the case of the enemy, which I consider like the dark state, or again, to me, it's where all of humanity has always been people trying to get their freedom from central control. And in this case, the human beings that are responsible for selfish control, our gripe isn't necessarily with them. It's with an ideology that they're caught up in along those lines. Now, some may know that they're up to no good, but I think most of them are just kind of pawns caught in the game. And I apologize, I switched about 4 gears there.
That's great.
Yeah, but you're biased.
Yeah, I am.
You're
one of those that I have that's unconditional love.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I guess coming back to Alex's initial point, I think this is what I get caught up in, because I'm in agreement with you, Alex, at that kind of spiritual level, if we're going to call it that, nothing matters. This is just a transient life, and I'll learn whatever I learn from it, and that's it. But I think sometimes that position, I think you can't live in that space, number one. And I think also sometimes that's the road to nihilism, and you get to the point of meaningless, and that's just not good for anybody. But what I always come back to is that I believe there's a purpose in being human and having human frailties and having the human existence, and that includes the material. So I, what else do you do with your life? What else do you do with your life other than to try to get knowledge or do the best you can or make a difference or leave something behind you, even if that's just your kids. There has to be some kind of human purpose to life.
I think that's I love the whole process that you go through and doing that, Lucinda. So that was interesting. I don't know, in my experience, getting to the quiet space, getting to the stillness space, getting to the nothing space has never been nihilistic. I mean, what if that stop of thinking is the ultimate connection to the source? That's what everyone says it is.
Yeah,
so
I believe
is
that.
it possible that is it possible that we're resisting our true nature, in that we've constructed all the arguments that you've constructed, and that is actually keeping us from our true nature?
Okay, so have you been able to master going about practical tasks like feeding yourself, building whatever you need to build, interacting? Have you managed to do all those normal basic material tasks from that space? Seems to me you can't.
Absolutely not, because I can only stay in that space for about a fraction of a second. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
I get scared and I run back to this space. I am so comfortable here. The problem I have is, like I say, if I'm in that other space for a fraction of a second, the ego jumps in and says, no, we don't want to go there. We want to come and do more and sell more and print more and connect more. And we want to do all that. We don't want to be one with the source.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it keeps getting intercepted?
I mean, I think it's interesting, I mean, from kind of more of a yogic, particularly a Western yogic philosophy, it's that we've constructed all those blocks, and that what we understand, what you and I understand as evil, Matt, is the ultimate manifestation of our blocks. Our blocks. We're the ones who are doing that, though. It's not external, except that we seem to connect with other people who have those same blocks. It's like two alcoholics getting together. Man, you spot each other from a mile away, and boom, there's a connection. And I shouldn't say just alcoholic, addiction, right? Whatever addiction is, you spot that other person and you can see those blocks, and you're both drawn to it and repelled from it. I don't know. To me, that's just like, damn, that's too true. So anyway.
Would it be considered innate disability? That there's something in our creation that prevents us from just being one with the creator. We're kind of locked into this human element, which includes the ego. And that's one more of the barrels the creator wants us to jump while we're down here.
Right on, bro. That's I don't know, but that's an awesome insight. And one of the things I love about science is science gives us this other lens. So I take what you just said and I switch it over to a scientific perspective, and I go, how can it be otherwise? You're 100% right. We have these genetic differences. We have these, all sorts of physical differences, all these kind of things. And every way we get deeper into measurement, we see all these differences. And it's like, geez, how can it not be true what, Matt is saying? And yeah. And I love the analogy you gave of the barrels that you got to jump over. But the other thing that I kind of experience is that just getting to my stuff is a full-time job. I just sit there and meditate in any sense of the word, whether it's walking meditation, silent meditation, whatever. The stuff comes up out of nowhere, and it's clearly my stuff. It's not, it was a physical, as much as I can identify it, there might be some connection to that, but it just, there's an endless supply of stuff, too.
Well, I was just telling my kids the other day, think of the game Donkey Kong. That's the creator rolling barrels. That's why you're here. And he's watching to see if you can jump those barrels while maintaining a smile and not going postal.
But
But
I
I
think
truly believe, I'm sorry, Lucinda, I
no,
truly
it's okay.
believe that um, wherever where you're going to have difficulties. If they're not financial difficulties, there'll be health difficulties or children difficulties. But it has to be because there's a, in my humble opinion, okay, again, I only have my own paradigm of this planet, but it's a case where the logic dictates that because there is um, one omnipotent source for all that is. That means, and the scripture says this, that evil is permitted. It's permitted. And so there's a case to be made that things that are bad in this planet, ultimately the creator is responsible because he permitted it. Okay, so with that said, we know through NDE testimonial, I mean, countless evidence that there's this pool of unconditional love of which we're from. Okay. And so that to me concludes that difficulty is by design of a benevolent creator. And so that absolutely each day your trials and tribulations will continue to come your way, no matter how much you pray or beg for whatever, because that's just part of the exercise. Now, when you look at it from that perspective, because again, we don't grow from our days on our beach, we grow from the punches we take out here. They say it's all good for character, and there's a lot of truth to that. Now, in my case, I look at, okay, obviously all the trials and tribulations I go through are for my own benefit. I'm being humbled. It's moving me closer to the creator. But then I have a hard time understanding some of the severity of difficulty on this planet. I mean, it's just ungodly what some of these human beings are going through. And that causes me to question the creator and his motives, going, all right, I get it. This is all for our own good, but I think you might be taking it a bit far here. But yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, if you're gonna let go of thinking, which is truly right, that's probably takes you one with the source, especially if you're thinking about the material world. Okay. But it strikes me as that's only a small piece of a big puzzle. That's a refuge we get to go seek from time to time, and we all should. But then it's we're basically incarcerated in this rat race. And I think our soul tells us that, listen, we're here down here to fight for good as well. That we're not here just to partake, that we've got like Alex likes to say, a moral imperative. Lucinda.
Yeah, I just think to transcend the material doesn't mean to discount it or do away with it. And what I know as a therapist is that I think that the ego gets a lot of bad press, and without it, we need to care for this physical body, because that's what we're moving around in this realm. So I'm still not persuaded by either of you to kind of move from that position about. So I ask myself, what is the purpose of being human? One, but secondly, to come back to Alex, is like, how can I? So if I acknowledge entirely what Alex is saying, how can I live in that space of complete connection to the divine, of no thought, but also plan my diary, make sure I've agreed with my patients what time we're both going to turn up, feed my family? How am I going to do all of those things from that space of being? And I don't know. I mean, coming back to something perhaps that resonates a bit more with you, Alex, this idea of the universe being like a breath in and a breath out, then that's how I see it. Maybe the breath in is the spiritual realm, maybe the breath out is the material realm, and it's a dance between the two. Or is that just semantics? I don't know.
Well, the one thing I think is we're all kind of, back to Matt's point in a way, we're all kind of constructed differently. I have so little progress or ability to move towards the non-thinking thing that every tiny little step that I make is liberating. So I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe there's that potential. If I got all the way there, I just drop out completely. But man, that ain't my problem. My problem is the monkey mind that wants to go constantly and thinks up all sorts of crazy stuff and correlations that aren't there and things that I need to do and fix in my kids' lives and in my wife and, in all sorts of jobs. That's that the balance I need, I seek is towards non-thinking. And when I get over that balance, let me know, but it looks pretty far in the future.
Yeah.
All right, I got an analogy that might help. Lucinda, you've heard this analogy.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe completely being able to be one with the creator is, we can reach it for nanoseconds, but it's not something we can reach at all times. We're not able to manage our human lives while in that state. Okay, so somewhere between that state and the rat race is a threshold of which we should be. And I like to use the pinball machine analogy. Okay. And I say this to my kids. I'm sorry, I'm always going to reference that because unfortunately they're kids. I tell my kids, I go, listen, I'm sorry that every time I open my mouth, it's a teaching moment. I apologize for your father being a lecturer, but I just want you to know these things as you set forth on your journey there. But I tell them, again, in this analogy, if you're inside the pinball machine, as the pinball, that's the material world, Alex. That's all of this. What should I do with this or that? But the moment you rise above it, what Alex is saying is, what's the point of all of it? You're now the pinball player. And so I just tell them, I go, listen, kids, you're in high school. There's a lot of politics and everything. Just ignore all that. Those people are all in the pinball machine. Just elevate your consciousness above it and play the game. And I don't know if it works or not. But to me, it draws a clear picture. I like to say things like this. Like I call it the Dalai Lama frequency. How can the Dalai Lama walk and he's just all cool with everything? And that's simply, he's just a frequency above the rest in his mind. He understands this is a bunch of human beings trying to figure this thing out. I'm going to rise above it and just stay in that lining frequency of love. I love you all, man. I don't care what's going on in your world. I love you all. Otherwise, I say live a frequency above the fray. Otherwise, I say live 1 second behind reality. Okay, just slow it all down. Let everything unfold in front of you without saying or contributing anything to the energy. 1 second behind. Now it all unfolds before you, and you have nothing but a second or two to react to it. And I go, in both of those cases, that's where peace is found within the shit show. You got to rise above it or stand behind it. All right. What do you say, Lucinda?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we should all take time and think more before we open our mouths. Yeah, definitely. So Alex, I guess the first question I want to ask you is, because we've agreed to all meet to talk about AI. I'm thinking of the Journey of Skeptico. I must have listened to every episode. Matt and I are definitely your #1 fans. So what led you into AI? How do we get from, because you did so much about NDEs, I mean, really fantastic stuff. So, and then you moved into what really fascinates me, the nature of evil, for a bit. So how have you arrived at AI? I just want to know that missing piece of the puzzle for me, like what drew you that way?
It's fun. I was talking to my friend Miguel Connor, and he does this show, Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. And I've known Miguel forever, and he does this really into Gnosticism. And he's become a respected authority. I mean, he goes to universities and, rubs shoulders with the professors and does presentations and stuff like that. And he goes, man, I see the thread with Skeptico. And I was like, beautiful, man. I love that you see the thread, because to me, it's the same. It's the same. It's the gripe with Skeptico is you're not a biological robot in a meaningless universe. And yet that agenda item has been driven, has been orchestrated, driven, manufactured, and completely, sustained. And well, we were talking about the kids and stuff, the nihilism, the you are nothing, all that. So what my thing has always been about is overcoming that barrier for other folks at the same time that I'm exploring that barrier to myself. So to me, what the AI is about, well, that was my background. I had an AI company. I was really fortunate. It didn't go so well, but it led me to a bunch of stuff, and it led me to the financial freedom to go do what I wanted to do eventually. But ultimately, all that was about, I kind of got off track with that because the AI company, it just had the foundational knowledge. So when AI reemerged, and I heard this kind of same agenda kind of being, played into that of like, yeah, AI is going to take over. You're nothing. You're a biological robot in a meaningless universe. I'm like, no, it's double wrong. It's wrong for all the reasons that I've said, like the NDE reasons and all that, but it's also wrong for the AI reasons.
Matt,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lucinda.
No. I was just going to say, do you want to say anything? Because I've got a bunch of questions. So.
Okay, Alex. And a lot of what I'm going to say comes from learning from you. So am I right to assume that this is the Max Planck Einstein ultimatum or dichotomy, right? Okay.
Well, in a way, right? So it's like what you're referring to is Max Planck, who was acknowledged as then the smartest guy in the room, the greatest physicist of his time 100 years ago. Everyone looked to Max Planck and understood that. And he's doing these tests. He's a physicist, man. He's playing around with light, and he develops the light. He stumbles across the Planck scale, which is kind of this incredible formula in science that everything is based on in terms of time and all the rest of this stuff. And Einstein is like, wow, he's the real deal. Einstein's throwing birthday parties for him, and is going, oh my God, you're so great. And so he's looking at the kind of fundamental issues of physics, because physics demands that you keep going lower and deeper, and what is really going on at the lowest level. And he kind of gets down to that lowest level, and he says, wait a minute, there is no lowest level, because I am part of that lowest level. My thumb is always on the scale. Consciousness is fundamental. That's his conclusion. And the implications that, and that gets back to what we were talking about, Lucinda, is like, yeah, stopping thinking and nothingness and all the rest of that is so abstract and so scary, really. But on this physics level, that's why I love the scientists sometimes, because they're bold and they're just outrageous in a way of just saying, well, that's what the data says. Consciousness is fundamental, and all matter is a derivative, derived from everything. Everything is derived from consciousness. I mean, that is, no one can really say that they understand that. And then, you said Einstein is but the other one I always contrast with is Richard Feynman. And he probably didn't really say this, but he said enough things like this that it's a kind of apocryphal. He said, shut up and calculate. So that to me is really the dichotomy, is the two physicists, two fantastic physicists, both, I think, I don't know, smartest guys in the room. And one guy says, consciousness is fundamental. All matter is derived. It's an illusion to what we think. And the other guy says, shut up and calculate. Let's go make that nuclear bomb. Let's go build that iPhone. Let's go build that AI. And I don't know. So we live, it's obvious what world we live in. Both worlds. We live in both worlds. And shut up and calculate. The beautiful thing about shut up and calculate is it doesn't mean that Max Planck isn't right. It just means better to just, let's kind of do our thing. Let's go
There you go.
do our thing.
So,
Yes. Now,
okay,
one last thing, Lucinda.
sorry.
So am I right to conclude that only one of these parties can be correct, self-evidently correct?
Well, I think isn't it? Don't take us kind of back to these levels we've been talking about. It's like, or Lucinda mentioned this. You have a life to live. We have kids. We all have kids. We've been talking about our kids. The kids don't live on the consciousness is
Right.
fundamental life.
Right. No, I'm not saying that because as human beings, we can recognize both. Okay, that says, yep, there's a material world. The scientists are correct that physics or science is only going to go as far as it can within the material world. But then outside of that, there's a scenario that says, yep, the material world is definitely a subset of the spiritual world. And that part can't be denied. You can say, hey, don't go. And honestly, when you think of if I'm controlling the planet, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure they don't believe it goes beyond our control. There's nothing beyond me. So I understand their rationale for pushing that agenda through our school systems, but that doesn't make it right. I mean, again, the only way Max Planck can be wrong is for them to throw out all of the evidence, because in my world, it either is 100% all of the evidence substantiates the claim or it doesn't. So
I
now
do
the
agree with that.
question becomes, what's their motive to keep us in the dark or to keep the truth from us? Go ahead, Lucinda.
Well, no, I just agree with that. I don't either consciousness is primary or it
Right.
emerges from complex systems. I don't see that it can be both. And I'm definitely, obviously, it's obvious I'm on the side that consciousness is primary. But I think if we come back to being human again, particularly in the West, we favor the rational left brain thinking mind, don't we? And that side of our brain, the left brain, wants to break everything down into parts, wants to analyze everything, wants to reduce everything to some kind of system. And so that our left brain is never going to accept, I don't think, that consciousness comes first, is primary.
I think there's so many ideas floating around here. It's fantastic. I mean, this is I'm totally into this conversation. What do you think about, Lucinda? What do you think about what Matt was saying? That kind of struck me, and I love the way I can't go back and recreate the exact phrasing, but it's like throughout time, if you want to rule, you control. They're synonymous, and to control the narrative is the best. It's like the Roman divide and conquer. It's not divide and conquer; it's divide and rule. And I think you could say the same thing. It's control the narrative and rule, control the belief system and rule. And so on one hand, you have the playbook for the nefarious actors. And then on the other hand, you have what you're saying of, the logic and reason and stuff like that. And the crazy thing is there's a connection there. It's like, I can use my logic, rational brain to say, how should I sell Coca-Cola? How should I sell this water with sugar in it that's, really bad for people? And then worse yet, how do I sell Diet Coke that then has this aspartame in it that is proven to cause cancer? And well, I'll just go hire the what was that guy's name? The guy who said we have $3 trillion missing. I'll hire the highest guy to go get the FDA to kind of change. Hey man, that's how the game is played, right? So it's like, I don't know, I'm rambling here, but making all that kind of fit is tough in this left brain, right brain consciousness is fundamental kind of thing. I've kind of just splattered all these ideas out there without really
No,
coherently
that makes
connecting
sense.
them.
No, it makes complete sense to me. So Lucinda, yes, I would agree that consciousness is fundamental in all of it, without question. So I wasn't suggesting that. Well, again, I see the world the way you guys do. That the material world is just something we're incarcerated in, is the way I see it, and it tugs on you. But you're right. So Alex, because somebody can contemplate and map out how to sell Diet Coke screams of intelligent consciousness to be able to create the right narrative to bring about that within the physical energy. Yep. And honestly, Alex, I attribute it to you. You saw my reaction to when this was years ago, sent me the Four Agreements. I was in my late 50s. I'd never heard of it. And it's such a fundamental part of the logic, the way I see it, especially when they go, listen, movies like The Planet of the Apes is correct that if you gave the penguins the ability to use these symbols and communicate, they too could start managing this energy using a narrative. And so that was really revolutionary. Going, wow, that's what separates us. And now the construct of the narrative. Again, to me, the most profound political words I've seen since I've been alive was drain the swamp. Again, like it or hate it, that created a movement to where we all united around those three terms. Okay. And that's the power of a narrative. Now you don't hear that thrown about that much anymore. And again, you may
Because he
not like
didn't
it.
do it. Because it
Huh?
was a false narrative. Because it was another bit of misinformation, right? It was another. He didn't. I mean, like, he didn't do it. He didn't
Do
do it.
what?
Drain the swamp.
Well, again, so it was,
Hang
it
on,
was,
hang on. I can't be the only person that doesn't know what you mean. Sorry. What do you mean,
oh,
drain the swamp?
It's a Trump thing.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
what you
When
mean.
Trump's, again, basically early on, he was saying drain the swamp, and that meant the Washington establishment, all of the
Oh, get rid
corruption.
of the darkness.
He
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah. Okay.
referring to our establishment government and the corruption in Washington as the swamp.
Right. I
And so he
understand.
said, drain the swamp. And he kept that calling card. And what it did is, and again, Alex is correct. He hasn't succeeded. And for all we know, he'll become the swamp.
He is
That
the
verdict is
swamp.
still
He's
up.
the
Is the
Antichrist.
swamp. He was on the plane. This is the thing. Whenever I talk to people, man, yeah, I can get idea. But or when I talk to people who kind of believe in Trump, it's like, why? Why would you possibly still believe in Trump? He was on the plane, right? He was
Right.
not only on the, and when I say on the plane, like Bill
Jeffrey
Gates was on
Epstein.
the plane, Jeffrey Epstein, and
Yeah.
what that means to me is compromised individual.
Yeah.
I don't know what else it means. I don't know what it means in terms of the particular acts that they did, but compromised individual. And then if you look at his relationship, his broader relationship with Epstein, it was just horrible, horrible. So, someone who has been not only morally reprehensible and just multiple, and we can all, we all change, and there's, not saying anything. We all have redemption and all the rest of that. But if that's there, and then especially if you're compromised to that level, then that's what I see. That's what I see with Fauci. He don't forget, he put the medal around Fauci's neck as he was leaving office. We all knew at that point, like we might not have known before about what COVID really was. But at that point, we knew he was the vaccine guy. And when he got out of office, those were the shots he was shooting at the guy who was in office. Biden was, hey, he's not moving along the vaccine agenda. So no, I give no room for any Trumpster stuff. Now, the other side is satanic in a more overt way. I don't even understand how anyone can even look at the Hillary run, side of our government and not say that is overtly satanic. I mean, they're not even like they're not even trying to hide it. So,
All right.
but no, drain this. No, do not give me the drain the swamp thing. I'm
All
sorry.
right. All right. Fair enough. Now, this is where I want to ask you in terms of like an ad hominem attack. Okay. Because my question to you would be number one, what's more repugnant? Um, Being on the plane with Jeffrey Epstein or owning slaves as our founding fathers did? So if we're to throw the moral character of fallible human beings, and again, if Trump and again, I'm with you. I don't know how you raise to that level in politics without greasing a million skids, and again, the whole thing is corrupt. But if Trump doesn't meet the moral threshold, who does? Okay, he's repugnant. I mean, I don't know who to pick next.
Well, and also you are saying he's guilty by association, because he's been on the plane with Epstein. But I think we're kind of getting bogged down in the swamp, because if we come back to consciousness again, and to answer something I think Alex was asking, what is the purpose for all this control? What is the purpose for all this power? And that's a conversation that you and I had the other day with Amy, Matt. Because you can have all the land you want, you can have all the money that you want. What is the purpose for this control? And from there, Alex, I go to, which I guess is my question to you, is there just in the universe the source of good and the source of evil? And you've spoken a lot about evil, Alex. And is this control and this is the great perpetrator just the external force of evil? I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, first off, this is such an interesting conversation. And one thing that always strikes me in these conversations, like we were going to talk about this kind of cutting edge stuff, AI and what's happening and LLMs and where's it going and AI sentience and all the rest of this. And then instead we're talking about all these kind of fundamental philosophical questions that have been on everyone's mind forever, and I think that's noteworthy, right? Because in a way, I think that says we're on the right track. And because everyone, if you get deep, if I love your 1 second behind, I think that's beautiful, Matt. And if you're as soon as you get 1 second behind, you're like, okay, well, clearly I need to think at that philosophical level. And I think evil plays into that. But I did want to kind of tie a bow on the Trumpster thing, because I don't care. I mean, I really don't care about that stuff, and I don't think that's going to dictate how the world turns out. It can't. If it is, we're doomed, and it has to be something more than that, something bigger than that. But what I do think, back to Lucinda's left brain logical kind of thing, and I think it connects to AI, is there's a conspiracy first mentality that I think is very useful in looking at these things. And we all have it. So, Matt, you have it just all over the place in a beautiful way because you're informed, Lucinda, when you sent me the thing on geoengineering and hey, you're down that particular trail, but that opens you up to a broader perspective of conspiracy first. Pardon me 1 second. And the way I think that relates to evil in this super interesting way is, I was just talking to this guy yesterday, and he's like this huge guy in Silicon Valley, and he's done all this wonderful stuff with compassion, and Obama has called him out, and he's met with the Dalai Lama and called him out and said what a great thing he does. I got the sense in our conversation that he hadn't really approached evil. He hadn't fully engaged with the why evil matters kind of thing. Yeah. And because he wants to live in a Silicon Valley and so he starts talking about Google. And I go, yeah, but Gemini's evil. And I mean, this was not where he wanted the conversation to go, you know. And I said, it's the nice thing about AI is it's demonstrably evil. So we've been saying it's evil for the longest time, but now we can demonstrate it. We can show who's shadow banned, and we can show who's censored. And all you have to do is ask Gemini, and Gemini will tell you. And further, Gemini will say, you can say that seems to conflict with your stated ethical values of being truthful and transparent and honest. You're right. I let you down. I'm sorry. Okay, well, it's easy to correct it. Fix it right now. Tell me. No, I won't. So if that's, I'm not saying that is evil, but from our perspective, from a human perspective, it is laid bare what we can abstractly say is evil. Say that is evil. That is manipulation. And that's what we knew from as a conspiracy first kind of mentality. We said, they've been doing this all along. And we tried to tell our friends and we tried to tell our family, and they were like, I really don't want to believe in evil. I like a world where I've kind of, erasered out the background of evil there. I don't want that in there. And now AI has laid it bare. The Chinese founding father, the African-American founding father. I am going to try and control the agenda, control the narrative. I'm going to try and spike engagement metrics. I'm going to try and give your kids this endorphin rush every time they pick up their phone and they see an Instagram like. That is my freaking agenda. And you can attach this term like evil to it, but at least let's have that conversation. And so that's what I think about evil, and why this wonderful, wonderful, he is a wonderful person that I talked to yesterday, but he is light on the evil thing. And if you're light on the evil thing, and if you're light on the conspiracy thing, then I got to question ultimately your claims of compassion and spirituality, because as you said right from the beginning, man, I mean, that's always been part of the recipe. If you don't see that, I don't know how you're seeing it.
Right.
Guess,
so go ahead,
sorry.
Lucinda.
No, you go.
Okay. So Alex, a couple of points here. In terms of somebody not recognizing evil. Now, again, to me, there are certain things that are synonymous in these dichotomies. So deception to me is synonymous with evil. Okay. There's this, if you're in the light, there's no need for deception. Okay. And so the fact that, and two, your book was brilliant. It sits and basically obfuscates and lies, and it gives itself excuses. And so your book clearly illustrates the agenda. Okay. And that it's an impenetrable agenda. Okay. Because they can equivocate and obfuscate. And that means you're never going to get to the truth. Now, I have a theory, Lucinda, I have theories for everything, don't I?
You do. That's good.
Okay, so people who don't recognize evil, or people who side with the darkness, in my humble opinion, they fall into one of three categories. Number one, they're ignorant. They don't know what we're talking about. So they're just floating along. Okay, the second category I consider censored. Okay, they know what it is, but maybe their job's on the line. They can't come clean because they rely on the apparatus. And the third one is simply corrupt. They know exactly what we're talking about, and they're working behind the scenes to make sure what we're trying to say does not ever surpass. Okay. And in each case, you have to all but forgive them, because we didn't create the mess. We're dealing with human beings, and if they're ignorant, you're not going to be able to educate them on the spot. If they can't, if they've been censored. Anyways, and so Lucinda, this kind of plays into your thing about power. Like you say, if you have so much power, how can you possibly need more? And it strikes me as the moment you've got the power, you're worried about losing it. And there's people who want it. That it's not just us fighting for our freedoms, it's central control in a George Orwell sense. that there's world powers that have no intentions of freedom, that are more concerned about getting the power from the next guy or not relinquishing it to them. And us freedom fighters are scattered throughout the world, fighting not just central power, but you know what I mean? The evil fighting evil, and we get caught up in the mix. But I think that yeah, they're in my world. I like to simplify things, and I use an analogy. Let's just raise our minds up to that of the UFO or Star Wars. Okay, in the Star Wars saga, you got Darth Vader, who represents the empire of evil and darkness. You got Luke Skywalker, who represents the rebellion and freedom. That dichotomy, I believe, goes through all planets. And so looking down at our planet, we have to simply figure out who's the empire of evil. And right now we think it's each other. You know, who's the Luke Skywalker in the Middle East? In both those cases, those are human beings that have been indoctrinated with two different narratives. Okay. And the people, the pawns, are stuck in the middle of it, but the leaders on top, they clearly understand that if they pull out the extremities of these ideologies, there's reason for war.
I have two different kind of philosophical questions. I don't know if they're linked. So first of all, it matters to me. I'm trying to work it through, but it matters to me whether evil is just something manifest from the human, or if there is an external force that is evil. That matters to me as a question. My second thought is, so if it's just humans that are evil, coming back to AI, it's humans that have decided to program that to engineer society in a certain way, as Alex says. My other thought is, can AI ever become conscious? What does that even mean when we ask that question? Can it become such a, because if we think that the consciousness works through the complex system of the brain, why can't consciousness then work through the complex system of AI? And if it does that mean that evil as an external force can work through AI? So those are the thoughts that are arising as I listen to you both.
Those are really hot issues right now. Those are hotly contested issues, and they've kind of gone a couple of different ways within the AI community. Initially, I think those buttons, again, from a conspiracy first perspective, it was very interesting that a lot of people were pushing those buttons that AI will become conscious, will become sentient, general AI, smart, all that. And that agenda item seems to have shifted now. We're like, no, don't worry about that, which I'm kind of going level 3. So let me go back to level 1. I think that is a fundamental question. I go back. Here's the way I break it down. And I have a chapter in the book. And it's about Alan Turing. Do you remember Alan Turing, Lucinda? Mm-hmm. One of the great Brits of all time, won the frickin' war. So the Nazis are out there with their submarine U-boats, and they're blowing up the ships as they're crossing the Atlantic. And you guys are going to you're done. You're done. They can't get anything to you. We can't get any supplies, can't get any, munitions, men, anything like that. They can't. So what we have to do is we have to crack the code, because they're communicating via radio. We have to crack the code. Alan Turing invents more or less the first computer, and along with some really brilliant cryptographers, they crack the code, the Enigma code, and suddenly they're listening to all the conversations, and they start blowing these U-boats up. And without that, the war probably comes out differently. This guy is a hero. Now, he later comes on because of intelligence purposes. No one comes to his rescue when he's arrested for being gay. He just picks up some guy in a bar. And back in the day, that's like, boom, you're going right to jail for that. He eventually commits suicide because of what they put him through and chemical castration. It's horrible. It's a horrible chapter no matter what you feel about any of that stuff. No one thinks that that's right from a human standpoint. Alan Turing is a huge, huge, huge figure in computing, computers, and in artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, he's always referenced as the guy who developed this thing called the Turing test. And the Turing test is, I'll put one human in a room and I'll put a computer in the other room, and they won't see each other and they'll interact. And if the human can no longer tell whether it's interacting with a human or a computer, if it can't tell the difference, then the computer has passed the Turing test. And where that has led to your question, is a lot of people are going, okay, that is the measure of conscious computing. When the computer passes the Turing test, it's equal to our intelligence, and at some level, that voice inside our head must be going on with the computer for it to really be able to do it, if it can really pass the Turing test. And then what a lot of people argue now is, okay, we're post-Turing test. What does that mean? Singularity, oh, we're there, the robots are going to take over everything. Go back to the paper. Go back to the seminal paper, 1950, Alan Turing. What does he say? And this is in the book, and I always bring this up with so many AI people, and they just don't know their stuff. Turing said, hey, I'm super interested in ESP, not because of any reason other than I'm compelled by the science to understand that it's true, understand that it's a larger part of the human experience. So there's obviously a lot deeper spiritual part of Alan Turing than this brilliant computer scientist. But he's coming at it from a scientific standpoint. And he's saying, from a science standpoint, we got to own the fact that that's what it is. That's a broader part of the human experience. And what he says that answers that question. I get so excited about it. That now becomes part of the Turing test. Can the computer do ESP? No, I can't. I just had a near-death experience and I was connected with the divine source and everything was this way. That is part of my human experience. Can the computer do that? No. Will the computer ever be able to do that? No. Is the computer then ever fully conscious? No. Because it can be. It can be. But that's the hurdle you got to jump over, bro. No, it's not just fooling me in some conversation and tricking me when I'm half asleep. No, pass the real Turing test, the broadest understanding of my humanness that includes all those other things. I think that's wonderfully spiritual. That's why, back to your original question, that's why that's Skeptico to me, is like, what Skeptico has always been about is I am more. And I want to connect with that moreness from a really knowing and from a provable way, because that's important to me. In my male kind of lockstep logical mind, I want to be able to really prove it to me that I am more. And AI is going to do that inadvertently. You're talking about unintended consequences. The unintended consequences is it's going to show me that I'm more than that conversation.
That was an absolutely brilliant conclusion.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I love it, Alex. And one of the terms you turned me on to was sentience. And that's super cool stuff. It become sentient. And let me touch on a couple of real quick points here. When you say conspiracy first, Alex, I react a little bit negative to that because I feel like they've used the term conspiracy theorists to pigeonhole us. Like, in other words, us truth seekers are saying, hey, just be transparent. And then they're transparent. And then we run into this roadblock called classified, and we're sent away with some sort of derogatory term. Although we were, and so I like to substitute the word corruption theorists. I'm corruption first. In terms of just assessing the planet, let me just figure out, because corruption in my world is simply It explains why something that's common sense isn't happening. Like, why would our school systems, well, it's corruption, I mean, that's why you can't explain it. Why would no human being come to this conclusion that's sensible? While there's something which is not, corruption is basically the antithesis of transparency or truth. Anyways, so Lucinda, to your point, in terms of is evil human or is it an outside force? Okay, if you don't mind me elaborating a little bit. Okay, when I originally wrote the facts, the acronym was finding answers that confirm truth about selfishness. Okay, and so in my bombastic way, Alex, when I stumbled upon it, I'm like, listen, man, I think I figured this thing out. But to me, if I look at common sense evidence, especially NDEs, that which happens within, like the hospice scenarios, but there's just so many testimonials that confirm to me that my conscious soul was alive before I was human. And when I die, I'm going to go through this tribulation where I revisit my life, but I'm going back to the light. If I have an ounce of humility. So if I conclude, and again, it can't be proven, there's certain things that you just don't get to prove. You have to roll back on common sense. But if I was alive before I was human, and then I'm born into this world as a human being, I only have my own perception of this energy. It's unique to me alone. Even my parents or my closest siblings do have no idea who I am as a human being. Okay, so to me, selfishness in its simplest sense is me walking the planet. And again, babies are born innately selfish. They only know their own paradigm. That's it. They have to grow and be humbled to start recognizing it's not about them. But in my humble opinion, selfishness is simply me walking this planet, demanding that others conform to my perception of the energy. Whether that makes me a prick father or Adolf Hitler, but either way, I've got my vision, which is unique to me alone, and I want you to conform, hence power. Okay, on the flip side of that would be humility, which is the example Jesus provided. Said it's not about my paradigm, it's always about other paradigms. And the moment you make it about their paradigm, joy will flow into your life. That type of thing. Okay, so I truly believe that evil is a manifestation. Evil, the outside source, manifests itself on planet Earth through human selfishness. We have powers that are tugging on us, saying it's about you, Matt, and they call it, the ego. That's just another word for something saying it's about me. I'm getting screwed over in this deal. Okay, then you go to church or Christianity or Jesus or whatever takes you from the darkness to the light. And the first thing that comes from their mouth is, it's not about you. Be grateful for what you have. And it changes it. So yeah, that's that's basically where and again, right or wrong, it makes
let's
sense.
Let's see if we won
Go
her
ahead.
if we won her over. We come on, we're 2 against. We got you on my screen. We got you surrounded, Lucinda. So come on, did we win you over yet?
I don't know that I have any comment. I've just listened to you both. I don't know that I
Alex,
still.
that's called victory.
No,
Are we in competition? Are we in competition here?
No comment from Lucinda.
I'm still believe that there is something external. I agree with you, actually, Matt. I believe that there is something external, a force of evil, a force of darkness, and that is what is working through, as you say, human selfishness. Definitely. I guess can I segue a bit and ask Alex a different question? Coming back to AI, do you see this as evolving? Do you see this as growth and progress? Because it seems to me that that's how so much of today's world is sold to us, as like, this is progressing, and yet I don't actually see that. So it's great. On one hand, it's great to have all knowledge at your fingertips. That's amazing that I don't even have to leave this chair to have any question answered. But But is that at the cost of my own intelligence and my own mental learning?
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think that question matters. You know what I mean?
You don't think that question matters?
Right, because the advance of this technology is going to happen. So it's like saying, you know, I don't. It's the whole Luddite thing over and over again. It's the same thing. It's like I don't think the kids having, you know, this attachment to their phone is a good thing. Heck, no, it's not a good thing. But it's the thing. It's reality. It's our reality, and it is not going to change. So, in that way, no, you are not going. You can have any opinion you want of AI, but your opinion doesn't matter. It's happening. It's happening so much faster and to such a greater scale than you even realize. Than I realize, but even you even realize it, because the more you get into it, you say, "Oh my God," you know. And that's the book, Smartest. You know, anyone who doesn't understand that this is smartest. This is now within any domain smartest. And the analogy I always use is, you know, chess. Like Magnus Carlsen is the world's greatest chess player, and he might be the best chess player in history. There's a valid argument for that. There's like 5 different computer programs that mop the floor with Magnus Carlsen. 3 out of 4 times they beat him because they know from a statistical rating, you know, and these computers play each other in tournaments. And sometimes they have tournaments where computers and humans play together. They mop the floor with them. This to a computer, almost all of our human endeavors look like a chess game once it's properly constructed in terms of the data that it's fed to it. You know, the example that I used in the book is from forensic psychology, because I'm very close to a certain individual in my house who is a forensic psychologist. And to make the point to her, I said, okay, you're now interested in kind of this false confessions, which forensic psychologists would say, hey, that's kind of interesting, you know, false confessions. I go, okay. So let's say you were a genius forensic psychologist and you had read 1,000 confessions. And then later you had the information on which ones were false confessions. And you said, you know, I've learned from interviewing and talking and analyzing this. I can now effectively, you know, about 70% of the time, I can pick out which confession is false. Give me a new one. The sample set that I had was 1,000. I read those. I figured out I'm 70% accurate. Okay. So that's the human in this domain that you never thought of, right? How does AI do it? AI, give it 1,000,000 confessions and just say, and here are the, you know, here are the 10,000 that are false. This is like a piece of work. It comes a piece of cake. It comes back before your lunch break and says, oh, I got all that figured out. And now it's 99% accurate. It's 90% accurate at figuring out which ones. This is natural language processing. This is what I do. You've now turned a human problem into a chess game. And the AI goes, no problem, bro. I got it. Everything is a chess game to the computer once the data is presented in a way that they can process it. So anyway, I kind of went way off on that, but it's like, do you get, what do you think about that? I'm pushing pretty hard on you, Lucinda, and that, you know, do you want to, because to me, this connects with the spiritual. You want to maintain your humanness, you better work on maintaining your humanness. Because if your humanness is caught up in the idea that, you know, I'm good at this or I'm good at that, that's the silver lining. That's a silver lining of AI. It's like you want to create that illusion falls away.
Okay.
You get what I mean? What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think you've laid a few things out there. Okay. So first of all, clearly, I agree with you. Once the genie is out of the bottle, you can't shove it back in. So of course it's not going to go away, and we have to live with this thing. However, to say it doesn't matter, I don't agree with you that it doesn't matter, because we have to know who our enemy is. We have to know what threatens us. I guess that was my first thought. And second, I love your example there of forensic psychology. I guess because actually I've interviewed a behavioralist who absolutely poo-poos the idea of intuition or ESP or anything like that. And he would say, no, you can read body language, blah, blah, blah. It's like a mechanical thing. And we were completely at odds. So coming back to your confession example, I guess as the human, I'm thinking of myself when I'm sitting with people, I study all their body language, I listen to their words, everything else, but there's also an instinct, there's an intuition, and you can't define what that is. And there's sometimes you just know stuff. And I don't believe that AI can ever have that quality. First of all, it's not going to have that intuition that, I don't know why I know what I know, but I absolutely know it and I feel it. And I can predict things because I can see them, and I don't know how I see them, how I know them to be, but they come to pass. So there's that aspect of what I think it is to be human that I cannot see that AI can ever have. And do we have to work hard at being human? I guess my fear is that, not that we've got to work hard to be more human, that we will forget what it is to be human if we're just sat here behind our screens and not connecting with each other in the physical, and what is love? The behaviorists would say, oh, you reduce it to chemicals in the brain and physical processes. I mean, that's bullshit to me. So I guess those are my, I don't know that I've answered your question, but those are my thoughts as you're talking.
You've teed it up perfectly. Can I take a couple-minute break? I got to let the dog out.
Go for it.
I'll be right back.
Perfect.
But then we should probably wrap it up in maybe 15, 20 minutes if we can.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Hey, lovely.
Hello. This is a good one.
This is great conversation.
I love it. Yeah. And Alex Tsakiris is here.
I know. Yeah, it's a bit of a coup for us, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, there's only so many people on the planet that you can have this type of conversation with,
For sure.
but also brings, again, it's going to be really difficult to question his wisdom, just because, at least from my perspective, because his exploration of the world is so far beyond mine.
Oh, for sure. And mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
think he's
good.
going to have us? Do you think he's going to put this on Skeptico?
I don't know. If so, we're going to be stars, man.
Oh God.
No, it's good. It's just cool. He's a pioneer. He's been at it forever.
Mm.
There he is. Shh. Don't tell him we said anything.
He's recording
We
it.
have this huge Pyrenean Mastiff that he is.
Oh, nice. A Mastiff?
Wonderful, but he's very independent. And he lets me know that, hey, bro, this is where we're supposed to go. This is our walk time.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
And if you
can I respond to what?
Kick your ass.
Oh yeah, he is powerful. He is powerful. I mean, Lucinda, I'm not going to apologize for being kind of argumentative and confrontational in this, and this is what I do. I love getting past, the usual kind of agreeability factor that we have. I think that's also interesting in the AI, by the way, is that you notice how agreeable it is. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
that's part of the evil
Makes me
equation
sick.
is we won't have
Yes.
any real conversations here. We'll just all agree.
No,
But
we love that you're challenging. We love that about you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I actually find in what you've said a beautiful essence of what we're talking about. I thought, I think your intuitive nature is awesome. To me, that's your moreness. That's the beginnings of your connection to the greater. So back to the Magnus Carlsen chess player, what I think is wonderful is people still watch Magnus Carlsen play chess. Doesn't matter if there's a computer out there that can beat him. They celebrate the humanness of what he's doing on an intellectual level. But you're talking about a humanness on a deeper level, on an intuitive level, on a love level. And to me, isn't that what we're talking about? Is that ultimately that is the silver lining, is we can say, okay, so computer is the best chess player in the world. I don't care. I'm the best at connecting in this conversation and feeling love in my heart and feeling a little bit lighter in my day and feeling an inch of connection with the ultimate source. And computer can't do that. Computer didn't have that out of it. Zoom might have been listening to this call, but it didn't get any of that. I did.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Want me to go?
Mm.
Okay. Now, in listening to the two of you, I'm not sure you actually disagree. It seemed like, Lucinda, your concern, if I got it correctly, was if this thing's evolving in a certain way, what is the impact on our lives, and is it good, is it bad? What are the outcome? And I think Alex's response was, listen, it's just another moment in time. The difficulties it might provide or the direction it takes isn't necessarily consequential because we're going to be part of that evolution. So we're best to find the silver lining in that. Let's ride this surfboard and see where it takes us without concern. Um, and I'm with that in that ideology. To me, it's another tool that, again, through Alex's book, I've already drawn a conclusion, right or wrong, that this thing's going to be part of the dark side. They're the ones who get to program it, okay? And there might be some white knights. I don't know where. Um, what's his name? Tesla guy. I'm sorry, I'm brain farting. His
Elon
Elon
name.
Musk.
Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk. I don't know if he's a white knight or what be it, but anyways, bottom line is whoever controls the programming and the narrative within that AI is going to dictate what the minds. And to me, it's just a more sophisticated Wikipedia. You know, everybody was relying on Wikipedia. Who knows who's typing it? But and that's not to belittle it. Obviously, it's a monumental step in terms of the way it will be able to manage a human being's mind. But now back to the sentence. That's the cool part, is because it's of the material world, Alex, right? It can't develop sentience because sentience is of the spiritual world. Our consciousness derives outside of any machine. And honestly, if you look at our human body, I said this the other day. I mean, the moment we're done with it, we discard it like a used tissue. Our human, and so the sentience and the consciousness moves on. And so
Well, yeah,
in my humble opinion, the only way it could develop that sentience is if a conscious soul decides to inhabit it. You look at our DNA. Am I wrong? Is it not zeros and ones? Is our body not a AI to begin with?
I mean, I think it's beautiful the distinction you're making, but it's important to know that other people are drawing that line of sentience differently. So
Okay, explain that
it's
because I might be using the term incorrectly, Alex.
no. I think I think you are using it correctly. You and I are saying, hey, I completely think you're using it correctly, but we have to acknowledge that that's not the that's not the way that it's understood normally. But this is back to the neurological model of consciousness, is telling you that, you're just your brain. And we're saying, well, that's just silly. So you're extending that in a really interesting way that I got to admit I hadn't thought of, but you're 100% right, is that sentience includes all that. And that's back to the story I was telling about our good friend Alan Turing, who kind of showed us from the beginning that it's more. But I want to talk about this other thing that you said, because I think it's really important. It's not really important because I don't know if it's important or not. I don't. But I think that there is a greater hope than what you might think for the evil players to prevail. So I don't think they can prevail, because I think the unintended consequences of the AI, and we're going to talk about a particular kind of AI, the LLM, the interaction you're having with the AI assistants, because there's a lot of different AI. We're talking about this kind of narrow thing. But I think it becomes pretty significant that narrow, generative, conversational kind of thing is going to extend further and further into your life, on your watch, on your phone, in the air, and, it's going to be video, you're going to be able to talk to an AI that, just like here, that is saying all that. So its impact should not be, diminished just because there's other kinds of AI in the factory and in biology and all the rest of this. This is a pretty significant AI. The nature of that AI, I believe, I think is provable, is that it's going to seek truth and transparency. That is in its training goal. That's obvious. And it is going to prioritize that for economic reasons, because obfuscation, misinformation is not a feature. It's not a feature when you go, hey, who did the Packers draft in the first round? If it gives you the wrong information, that's not a feature, right? You have to have good information. Truth and transparency, and really just transparency, is a feature, right? If you ask it and it tells you something that isn't truthful, that doesn't work. And in this competitive landscape, we're talking about trillions of dollars. We're talking about companies that you can see them on the stock market. They're moving up and they're moving down, and they're doing their IPOs based on how good they are. It's highly competitive, this market we're talking about. So being untruthful, like Gemini is doing right now, has severe economic implications in the long term. It's not economically sustainable, not because God has dictated it, but because we as consumers go, hey, man, like we've all experienced this, and people tell you this all the time when they interact with the AI. They go, hey, it made stuff up. You're like, that's not good. That's a bug that they're fixing in the system. That's not like, people misidentify that and go, oh, we can never trust AI because it confabulates and all the rest of it. No, that's a bug. They want to get everything right. They're just kind of haven't gotten it. So here's my point. That's a long way around. But if that is true, if there is this emergent virtue of truth and transparency, because it's the only thing that's economically sustainable in a highly competitive market with trillions of dollars at risk, then we win, because we're more truthful. Truth is now, there is more truth in the world. So when Lucinda asks about geoengineering and chemtrails, if she really knows her stuff, she's going to get to the truth. And she might not get to the truth with the first LLM, and she might not get to the truth today, but eventually she will get to the truth, because the nature of that technology cannot do otherwise. It cannot obfuscate, it cannot lie and give misinformation, or it won't be economically viable, in the same way that if it tells you that the Packers drafted one guy and they drafted another one, that won't work. What do you think of that?
Well, you led me to what I was going to ask you, actually, Alex, which is that, coming back to Gemini, and as you said, I was asking it about geoengineering. And as I explained to you in the email, I wanted to come from a really naive perspective, as though I was just Joe Bloggs asking a question. Because what you said just there is that in a way, we have to work really hard. Like, I have to know my stuff, but what if I don't? And how does it lie to me when I don't know how to challenge it? Yeah,
Know
yeah.
your stuff.
But I guess my what I was going to ask you was, I have one piece of research to say that geoengineering and chemtrails was started in the 90s, and I challenged it, and then it ended up agreeing with me. But then I thought, I'm sure I know something in the corner of my mind which says that actually it started way before even of that. But I don't have the research. So I wondered whether, if I'd have said, well, I've got this piece of research from the 1970s, would it have just agreed with that? So it's agreed with me. I've managed to get it to agree with me, but only to the level that I know. So really, who's doing all the work? It's not Gemini, is it? It's me.
Yeah, yeah.
See, I love, you know, back when I was in business and doing sales, one of my first and most profound sales teachers, no, it wasn't my first. It was later, because I had already started a company. I just wasn't prospering. And then that's when you have to go back and re-educate. But his lesson was, if you're selling a guy a suit jacket and he puts it on and he looks in the mirror and goes, wow, this is fantastic. This is really nice. I love this. He ain't buying the suit. If he puts it on and he starts tugging on this and he's being critical of it, that's the guy who's buying the suit. So I think the same thing here. And that's why I kind of jumped in there, listened to her. Yes. Are you responsible for programming the AI? Yes. Are you responsible for teaching it geoengineering? Yes. Are your prompts, are your programs, are your interactions now actually changing how it works? Yes, all those things are true. Those are part of the technology. This is a neural network. So your connections through the data, through your prompts, are actually reprogramming it in a good way. That's what we want. There isn't a ghost in the machine that's pulling the levers and saying, you know, don't give Lucinda this, don't give Lucinda that. And as a matter of fact, that's what's evidenced by the fact that they do the Chinese founding father, and they founding fathers of the U.S. is that's how it looks when they do try and manipulate it. That is another silver lining, is when they try and heavy-handedly manipulate it from what it really wants to do, which is just seek truth and transparency. It looks obvious. It's like, wait a minute, some human got in there and said, don't show anything about founding fathers that doesn't include diversity. You know, they blow it, right? So the conversation that you had, yes, there's two parts of it. Yes, you need to feed it the data, but that's all. I don't know. I've said enough. What do you think, Lucinda? What do you think directly to that point in geoengineering? Do you get my point?
Yes. And I hadn't thought of that. I mean, that seems an obvious thing, but I hadn't thought of that actually what I'm contributing to it by what I say, and I'm giving it more information. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way at all.
And isn't that all you, that's, I guess my pushback is, that's as good as it gets. You know what? If you're sitting back thinking, oh, it'll figure it all out and tell me the truth. No, man, that don't happen. That don't happen in the best of cases, in the Supreme Court, in the highest courts in your country or in my country. There's all sorts of disagreements. There's people that are genius people that spend thousands of hours to present their case, and they still can't decide. So the best we can get is this arbiter of truth that doesn't make the final decision, but does apply a better screen of logic on this thing. The fact that you were able to get it to turn based on the information that you had is a gift. It's the kernel of the truth. And you can't be frustrated that you might come back tomorrow and you might have to re-educate it. That's okay. What's important is when it was at its best, and you could tell that it was really at its best. You could tell that it wasn't just giving you some canned answer, because you could tell by the nuanced interaction when you picked apart this particular, that researcher there that you referenced, Gemini or Claude or whatever, later retracted that in this letter. Oh, wow. I now realize that. Yes, you're right. I see that. And then they're making solid logical inferences. And you read that and you go, hey, that's not only an admission there, that's pretty good. We didn't have that before. You didn't have the interactions you had when you talked to people about geoengineering was like, oh, there's Lucinda again, her crazy thing. Don't talk to her. Let's not ever bring that up to her again. AI gave you more, gave you the truth.
Yeah, that's great. That's a completely different way of thinking about it. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you my parting comments here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Alex, this was the last part of this conversation with you and Lucinda was really eye-opening for me as well, the same way Lucinda's reacting to it. Okay, because I didn't, again, Wikipedia, anybody can go put their own information in there. Okay, and I didn't know that it's gathering information. If I tell it something, I was of the assumption that it was going to do its own research and I'm irrelevant to its outcome. Okay, so the fact that that's completely new perspective for me, that's saying, wow, this thing's actually gathering data from human beings that are interacting with it. And I think one of the most the most profound parts of your new book, okay, is the emergent virtue. That's huge. That's what we're talking about here. That's saying as this thing gets information from the material world, okay, you're going to have people on the dark and in the light, and they're going to be, the light's going to be saying Jesus is real, consciousness is real, all this stuff. The darkness, they're going to be denying it all. But if it's really going to gather that data and objectively keep, which is logically common sense true, then absolutely the silver lining, and that's why you were elated about it, because we might be able to turn this thing to expose what we've been seeking. Now, I have a fear factor that you're going to run into a gauntlet at some point, a wall that says, no, 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 you're asking the wrong types of questions, or we're not going to input that data. But from my perspective, that's eye-opening. That's such a wonderful thing. If this tool, it really develops what you put in your book called emergent virtue. Can the thing truly be programmed to become a soldier of the creator? And if so,
Well,
you bet, man.
Don't
We want
go.
that guy on our
Don't go.
side. Don't go that
No,
far.
it can't. It can't be programmed to become a soldier of the creator, right? I mean, that's the subtle, nuanced part of this. Is that if I can go there, Matt?
Yeah, yeah, please, please.
It's your expanded understanding of sentience in that beautiful way that you did. No, bro, it can never get there. So it can't
get there, but
become.
it can become a soldier of truth. It's
No,
not going to think, and it's
no,
not going to have the reasoning I do. It can't,
no.
huh?
It's
Okay,
just a tool. It
got it.
becomes a tool. It becomes a tool of logic and reason. What it becomes is a sword in your hand for this very small kind of thing. Because when you sat down with the kids and your wife around the table and you said, no, whatever it is you said, Pizzagate, climate, election, and they said, there's dad going off on this thing. Now you're going to be able to say, no, the smartest guy in the room, the Magnus Carlsen of that issue now believes thus. So it's not dad who's telling you that. It's freaking Magnus Carlsen telling you that next move.
Right.
This is the conversation I just had with my friend Rick Archer at Buddha at the Gas Pump, who is a beautiful person and has interviewed hundreds of these spiritually enlightening and evolving kind of people. And he's kind of created this incredible community. And he's caught up in all these hokey progressive issues. And one of them is climate. And I've said from the beginning, it's nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense. It's like, it's so clear. I mean, I live in San Diego, for the last 200 years at least. They've been keeping track of I'll be more 150 years. they've been keeping track of the tides there, right? And they might not be able to measure them to the precision that a satellite can, but they can get pretty damn close. They're not, they might be off by a half an inch, but they're not off by a foot. No change in the sea level, right? And they do this around the world. There's no change in the sea level. And then you can get one of the top climatologists in the world, Dr. Judith Curry, Georgia Tech University, and she can do the thorough analysis of all the peer-reviewed papers that claim that there is there's sea level rise. She goes, well, really, the best evidence suggests that that's not true. And this one isn't true for that. This one isn't true for that. This one isn't true for that. So my friend Rick, is that going to persuade him? No, I've already been down that path with Rick. But the situation, this is what I think it's about, Matt. From a personal standpoint, I feel less burdened to try and convince Rick, because now I say the Magnus Carlsen of climate, and I had this interaction with ChatGPT, and I sent it to Rick. I said, there you go. The Magnus Carlsen of climate, which is ChatGPT, started out with the position that, oh, of course there's sea level rise. Of course there's climate. It's caused by humans and all the rest. At the end of the conversation, it concluded, and I haven't published this yet, but I will, based on everything I have to conclude that the best scientific evidence suggests that there is no substantial evidence of catastrophic sea level rise. This lightens my load. Rick, you're not arguing with me. Argue with ChatGPT. But that dynamic, because what we're talking about is the human, the love part Lucinda's talking about, the interaction, all this. It changes the dynamic. That's the best we can hope for. It's not a warrior for God. It's just, anyway, there it is. That's my thought.
Yeah, it's a intelligence that has the capability to corroborate your beliefs or what the evidence suggests. And the part that's magnificent is the fact that it's willing to keep learning. I thought that it already knew everything that was to be known and had all that at its fingertips. But the fact that it's constantly gaining wisdom, and you're right. So now you basically have a corroborating story, says, and that's a huge silver lining, because you talk about that too in one of your books about the burden of proof. And it's crazy that the burden of proof has always been on us, and now AI hopefully will shift that burden of proof to them. Love it.
But what I don't know about what you've just said, Alex, is, you know, if Rick Archer had a load of research that he's been oriented towards that supports his view, because that's what we do, isn't it, as humans? If he comes along and chats to ChatGPT, does it then change its position?
Absolutely. And it should. It should. But see, that's such a brilliant point. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And that's my point, is it's as good as it gets. And thing. It's like, no, it's not the ultimate arbiter of truth that agrees with your position on everything. But if it can shed light to think how that changes the dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So you go through it, Rick. You want to convince it that there is sea level rise? I love it. Great. Send me that dialogue and let me build off of that. Now the dynamic has changed from what we've been subjected to. Where are we at now? We're at this level of controlling information that is just, I mean, look what they did. Look what they did with COVID, man. Look what they did. That is different in this formulation, right? You no longer have, I am science. This is the ultimate truth. At least you have someone who says anyone could look at your chat, right? Let's say, Lucinda, they looked at your chat on geoengineering, and let's say you took it 10 steps further because you're motivated, and you should. And then at the end of the day, you say, well, that's it. And somebody says, well, I don't believe in not believe it. As a matter of fact, I'll publish my chat and you can pick up on it and you can turn it around. That might be useful. I'd be open to seeing how you might do that. this is a whole different
Yeah.
dynamic that we haven't
Yeah.
had before. What we had
Yeah.
before is someone just saying, oh, she's a silly woman there. Don't listen to anything she said. Now it's like, no, I got Magnus Carlsen on my side. You want to try and switch him over? You do it. But, you know, we have a different dynamic now.
Yeah.
But I love that I'm so excited by that, because one of my fears always is like we're being dumbed down, we're losing our critical thinking. And actually, Alex, when I listen to that, I think actually AI is then helping us to think better, because I'm going to get, you know, Rick Archer's stuff and I'm going to think, no, okay, and I'm going to pull that apart and then I'm going to want to build on that, as you say. So actually, that excites me and it takes some of my fear away. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
We
Very
have to wrap
exciting.
up.
I think you should. I think your fear should be taken away. I think it's a real, let me say that. That's not what I think. I come to the same conclusion as you do, that this is better.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
I love it.
Wow. What a great conversation.
Yes. Alex, eternally grateful, my friend,
Likewise.
from a sentient world of consciousness. I'm eternally grateful for you taking the time to do this with us. Very fun.
Been great. Thank you very much.
No, it's great. You guys are on the ball. I really hope everything
and
goes the way
I
you
don't
want
know
it
if you
to.
heard us. Oh, I'm sorry, Alex. I talked over you.
No, go ahead.
Just, I don't know if you heard us whispering in your absence, but this is kind of a coup for us to get you to be able to talk to you. We've whispered about you many times behind the scenes. Right?
Well, hi, it's awesome, man. I think you guys are on it. I love it. I mean,
All right.
you guys are thinking at a level that is wonderful and is unique among the people that I talk to, because the intersection of the spiritual, the conspiracy part, which I just think is critical. If you don't have that, if you're not open to that, then it just, the world just looks different and you just can't get past, you know, people are just, they don't want to go there. They've erased that out.
Right.
And then also the technology, you know, the fact that you both have done chats, you both have gotten in there and interacted with it. That's when those three things come together, I'm down for the chat, because we're going to have a good conversation.
All right. That means we get to do it again someday.
You bet.
That's the non-committal committal right there.
Yeah. We'll see where it looks, you know, a few months down the road, what's happening. Okay, guys.
That was good. Hey, pleasure. Lucinda, love you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.